This is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I'm the fellow who has a hyphen in my name. The hyphen is silent, but I am anything but that. This is a Compass Point series, and before we go any further, we want to remind each other and one another that Compass Point is a way in which we help one another navigate through the trials and tribulations of life. And the compass is something you look at, it's in your hand all the time, and you point it and you start thinking about how directionally you're going to get there. Now, in order to do this, we have this morning, and I won't say this morning, we get into trouble on that. We have to use a word like ubiquitous, or we have to say democratic, because it does depend what time of the day it is.
Or on this day.
On this day, that's safe. Okay, it's 24 hours. And anyway, we have this morning the Voice of Respectonomics, which is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley, and co-host Sarah Benton. And in my finest English on this beautiful spring-like morning, I can say good morning.
Good morning, Jeremy.
Good morning, Sarah. And this morning, what we're doing, the topic is called The Third Way. And the third way sounds a little bit sort of almost shapeless. I want this to be understood to be this discussion we're having this morning is probably the centerpiece of Respectonomics. And it's bringing forward every aspect, every sphere of dignity that one human being needs to express to another. And this isn't, when I say need, this isn't a wish list. This is to do with the fact that our very nature requires us to be relational one to another. And the concept or the ingredients, the lubricant to that connectivity, to that relational concept is in fact dignity. So that's where we're going to go this morning. We call it the third way because we've tried other ways, humanly speaking, and the third way is, as I say, to bring us to this relational togetherness that we want to explore one with another. And I'm going to start off with how we express this relational connection, because there are actually three levels or three places in which you can do it. One is in body, one is in intellect, and one is in spirit. Now, the body part is kind of interesting because we bodily actually need to be with one another. I think there's a physical expression, or not physical, but a physics expression that explains what happens when two bodies come together. And do you not find it interesting that after the pandemic, the hue and cry from corporate everywhere was get people back to work, get people back into their buildings. And I mean, we've all
back into the office, back together again.
Back together.
Yeah. Physically.
Yeah, the physicality of it. And that's really the body part speaking one to another. And I think we all know that you can work remotely, but you can't work remotely all the time. I mean, as a statement of life. So that's that part. Then there's the intellect. And the intellect is what I call the software of if you look at the body is more like the hardware of your computer. Now we've got the software, which is the intellect. And the intellect is the way that you and I connect with one another, exchange ideas, come out with new ways of looking at things. We don't have to agree. We don't have to disagree. But there's an intellectual process. It's two people coming together where intellect is allowed to explore one another. I have to, you know how you love all your Greek? Come on, just say it once.
Jeremy, I love the Greek.
Okay, here it is. Because it was Mr. Plato himself who said, the art of good debate is to apprehend the truth. So in other words, what we want to do is to bring each other together intellectually so that we can form better ideas, better opinions, better ways of doing things. So we got the body and the mind. The spirit is more complicated because most people, when they hear the word spirit or soul or inner being, you know that thing when people almost freeze up and say, I don't want to talk about that. You know, they feel like it's sort of a softy, touchy, whatever. And I mean, let's state one absolute truth. And that is that spirit, that soul is extraordinarily personal. It belongs to the individual. It's not something.
Absolutely.
It's not something that I can grab hold of. The only person who can, in fact, grab hold of it is the individual, him or herself. So, with this in mind, what we're going to explore today is what is it about our relational being that allows one soul, one spirit to address another or to integrate with another. There's no higher calling than to see two human beings walking along together, maybe sitting at the kitchen table, whatever the arrangement is, the social arrangement is. You know that one of the highest compliments you can ever pay to two human beings is they are soulmates. It's a lovely expression. And it runs far deeper than they think alike, they look alike, and they run the same way or something. No, soulmate has a depth to it that is, it almost doesn't need explaining. It stands on its own merits.
It's an understanding.
It is an understanding, and it's a very deep one. And it's very beautiful. It's a jewel. And I think also, if I can say then it can happen between two people, can we not go to the third way and say it can happen with three people? And if you get your head into multiplication, can it go with four people or five people? And the answer is, of course it can.
See, I've often heard people talk about their soul group.
There you go.
Right.
And that's a very important point, because a soul group is often one that is created when you have a small group. We have said consistently in a lot of our episodes, series, we have said having small groups is one of the keys to bringing people together, where you do not feel that you're being, attacked. You don't feel like you have to be defensive. You're being brought to a common table where you can share your ideas with impunity, without the sense of anybody jabbing you or anything. It's a wonderful, wonderful
safe space.
Yeah, it is a very safe space and a wonderful expression of humanity when you get a small group functioning like that.
Absolutely.
But there's a word I want to bring to the table. And this has got a little bit of Latin in it, but it's not actually my original word. And the word is ubiety.
Okay, and please do expand on that.
Well, it comes from the word ubi, which is Latin for where, and this, in a sense, means wherever. You know the word ubiquitous, where we say it's everywhere? Well, ubiety has a very specialized meaning. It's actually an architectural expression. And what it is, if you go into a dealer showroom for a car, like a Toyota or something, you go into the showroom, that showroom has a ubiety to it. It is designed to show off the cars. It has big windows. It has space you can walk around. It has desks where people are sitting there, to sign documents or whatever. But there's a ubiety to it. If you go to the dentist's office has a ubiety to it. You would not go into a dentist's office and think of that as being a showroom. You wouldn't go into a showroom and think that's a dentist's office. Sometimes it feels like it. But anyway, truth of the matter is, ubiety is a very good way of explaining the functionality of a building and its purpose.
Okay.
The human being is the same. We have this ubiety. We have this construction. We have this functionality that is designed for us to be relational. We are designed to be relational to one another. And there's almost a magical ending to that, because if we are relational one to another, and this is the starting gate, I think it's the absolute key to respectonomics, key to this whole issue of dignity one to another. If we come to grips with relational responsibility one to another, that is that same responsibility, relationally speaking, that we then express to the environment, we express to the ways that other people live. It takes on a far, far broader context. So getting this relational being one to another at what you might call the ground level has enormous implications and enormous throw-offs to it. And
it's foundational, right?
I believe it is.
Many things that have that ripple effect.
Exactly. And what happens is when two individuals come together in this relational concept, where the soul is allowed to speak to the other soul, one of the things that's kind of interesting about this, if I were to talk to the chief executive officer of a huge corporation, you can almost hear that individual saying, why are we talking about the soul? I mean, you can almost hear that question, the cynicism, the the raised eyebrows, probably the rolling eyes too. Wouldn't be
Well,
surprised.
it's not corporate language or
It's
business
not
language.
corporate language.
There's
Yeah,
a lack of comfort around that word
exactly.
in
Well,
that environment.
okay. Well, the third way is breaking down that formula completely. In fact, it's throwing it out. Because if we have this concept of relational responsibility to one another, think about what that does. We've already said that if it's true between two human beings, it extends into our understanding or our belief in the environment and the things that we want to preserve. If you're running a business, or if you're running a country, or if you're running a committee, if you have this sense of responsibility, relational responsibility, that is going to extend all the way down the line. It's infectious. It's the counterpoint to a toxin. You know how a toxin spreads? Well, this is something that spreads, except it's beautiful, it's constructive, and it's edifying. And the point of the matter is, the more relational we become with one another, the more we will understand other people's needs, their preferences, their aspirations, their ambitions, all of those things that make up this human dynamic. I think that if you look at the source of this relational power, and we say, well, it resides, let's say, in one's inner being. And your inner being is very personal. You can define it as soul or spirit. But whatever your inner being is that you describe, you know what I think? I think, Sarah, it's time for us to dust that off. I think a lot of people are so caught up in the necessities of living, understandably, but
Yes.
also caught up in the obsessions of wealth and getting things done, not looking foolish, not taking risks. You get into all of those sort of what I'm frightened of things. And as you get into that, the great advantage of resorting to one's soul is your soul is impregnable. No one else can get at it. But there is one person who can get at it, and that's you and me. In other words, me personally. Jeremy
Right.
can look at his soul, can consider it, and dust it off, as I say. Take off the dust sheets, take off the tarpaulins, take off all the barnacles, and let it come forward. Because when it comes forward, that soul we are archetypally, we are ubiatally, we are made to have our soul respond to another human being. And it's a beautiful relationship. And interestingly, it does not mean that I have to agree with you on anything. That's got
Right.
nothing to do with it.
It's about being respectful.
It becomes to the heart of respect one to another. But I think that respect, how often, as I know, when I was being brought up, raised in boarding schools and all that stuff, but one of the things was this whole word of respect. It was drilled into us. But the problem was, it was an ordination. It was a mandate. It didn't come from the soul or the inner being, the spirit, whatever you want to call
It
it.
was unnatural. It was contrived.
It was contrived. And I think you get a lot of that in relationships today. You know, when you go there to complain about something that hasn't happened, and the person behind the counter says, I am so glad you brought that to my attention. And they just read that off at a script card they were given at 7 o'clock that morning. No. What we want to do, and you're very big on this, is, hey, let me understand what you're conveying to me. I want to understand better. But what you're doing is you're allowing your soul, your spirit, your inner being to coordinate, to integrate with the other human being. And when you think about it, this whole business, we have this ghastly expression in business and in politics and everywhere else, anywhere you go practically, we talk about human resources. And human resources is sort of heralded as being where we contain and build all our human relationships. The problem with human resources is the very nature of the wording is appalling, because the word resource applies just as much to copper, lead, lumber, and zinc. Well, I ain't lumber and I ain't zinc. I am a human being. And the whole concept behind this humanity, the whole concept behind our relationship building with one another, is to understand that it's the human being that we are addressing, that we are coordinating with. No transaction, economically, politically, whichever way you cut the cake, no ship can sail, no truck can move unless there's a human being.
I think too, I think along the way, we've somehow come up with similar to what, what you were just talking about in terms of an automatic response. We've got
Mm.
these canned responses to
Yeah,
scenarios or
yeah,
situations that we've been prompted
yeah,
or told or taught to
right.
say. And I think what we're doing is we're removing the ability for us to, as individuals to have that, or as humans to have that authenticity in a
Mhm.
conversation or a dialogue or managing or
Right.
navigating things.
And your authenticity word is very important because nothing can be more authentic than your soul.
Right,
Nothing can be more authentic, and I call it the soul. I mean, I have to apologize to listeners and to you, to me, to everybody, because everybody has their own definition and understanding of this inner being or
right,
this third way.
right. Call it
Every
whatever it is that you like, that you're comfortable
Yeah,
with, but
yeah,
that's
yeah.
your label, if you will, for it.
Exactly. So the language will, let's say from here on, we'll call it the inner spirit and
There we
just
go.
say, let that inner spirit flourish. Because when it does, not only do we build connections one to another, but we become far better at grappling with not only the needs of people in our immediate surrounding, but what about the end customer? What about the
Right,
end shareholder? What about the supplier? I can start understanding where that individual is coming from. And
right,
once again, doesn't mean I have to agree. One of the
right,
cornerstones to respectonomics is, well, there are two really. The aspiration of respectonomics is to restore the dignity of the human being. I
right,
can't think of a higher calling than that, and also cannot think of a higher calling than allowing that inner spirit to speak to the other inner spirit of the other human being. I just
right.
can't think of a higher calling. But there's
Tell me a little bit about symbiosis parasitism.
well, you see, when you get two people coming together the way we've described, I think we've probably explored that, the whole benefit of two people's inner
Right,
beings, spirits coming together. When you do that, what you create is a symbiotic relationship. In biologically speaking, what happens is the relationship becomes accretive. It becomes exponential. It grows, it prospers, it enjoys, and it's something that believes in legacy. It believes on handing it on to somebody else. I mean, isn't that the calling to our environment?
mhm,
That in actual fact, yes, of course we want to protect it, but we also want to be the ones that can say we left it to our grandchildren in better shape than we found it.
right,
So this whole symbiotic relationship is so powerful. And it's powerful in the sense that it's self-accumulating. It allows us to build into areas, into knowledge, into philosophies, pragmatisms, any way you want to cut it. You put two human beings, three human beings together who are in a symbiotic relationship, and the results are staggering. They're incredible. And you and I have experienced this within what I call the Dignity Trust. The Dignity Trust, as our hearers, listeners probably know, is the organization behind us that brings together, it's our small group that brings together ideas and so on. And it's unbelievable the ideas that ferment and that come up to the top. They're really, really extraordinary. So
well,
that's the symbiosis.
right. I was going to say, and what I also love about the group is you can each share your own perspective, and they're all received.
Absolutely. Because in actual fact, that is, if you think of a soul to a soul, inner spirit to an inner spirit, it's like a reservoir. A reservoir works on two principles, something coming in and something going out, and usually
Mhm.
water. Our reservoir is this beautiful relational being that can go from one to another. And that when you exchange an idea with me, I receive your idea because it fills my reservoir. I mean, who in their right mind wouldn't want to fill their reservoir?
Right,
Particularly when the intent behind it is noble and honorable and decent and looking for just for getting ways for people to live better and happier together. It's
right,
brilliant.
right.
So that's the symbiotic part of it. And then you said, Jeremy, what's this parasitism? And
Hmm.
that's the ugly toxin that's in so many lives today. It's a parasite. A parasite is a nasty tribal animal that basically sees what it can get out of the arrangement and
Mm.
knows that when it's eaten up the host will die. And when the host has died, you know what that parasite does? It moves to another place. It's like a locust. He's not a very nice animal, but
No.
parasitically speaking, you see it in politics, you see it in
Yes.
corporations, you see
You
it
see
in
it there.
we're seeing it everywhere. And the third way is saying no to parasites, yes to symbiosis. And to get the symbiosis working, then all we're asking is, or presenting, the ability for one human inner being to speak to the other human inner being. And here's something really fascinating. If you are in, and try this sometime, you're in a coffee shop and there's a long line of people and you need to be on your way. Didn't you have a cup of coffee in your hand a minute ago?
Yes, my son brought me
I
one.
thought so. I'm fairly sure it was your mother that gave it to you. But anyway, but point of the story is when you line up for that cup of coffee and the person behind the counter is trying to handle, all the things that are going on and wonders if somebody's made a fresh pot of coffee. I mean, all those kinds of things. Try something really, really interesting. But stand there at the counter. You don't say anything, but you just allow your inner being, your inner spirit, to speak to the inner spirit of that other individual. And the results are staggering. It happened to me recently. I was in a town hall and I
Hmm.
just did it as an experiment. The lady came to the counter, didn't know me, and I just did exactly what I've said. I said to my inner spirit, "Hey, you talk to that inner spirit. You two have a little chat." I mean, the first thing she said to me was, "Well, so and so isn't here today, but do come back any time."
Mm.
Meaning, in other words, I was suddenly welcome, I was reasonable, I was all of those things. And the other thing that happened as I did that, it gave her a smile. And in a world of anger and
Hmm.
contempt and put
And
downs,
complaining
mm-hmm,
and lack of
yeah,
patience.
yeah. But all I did was I didn't say anything. All I was doing was I was willing my inner spirit to speak to hers. And it's a beautiful, beautiful way of the two human beings connecting. And why that story is of interest, aside from the laughs and the pleasure that came out of it, was I got a result from it way beyond anything I could have expected. Because she said to me, I'm going to arrange for you to see the CAO, the Chief Executive Officer. He'll be back on whatever date, and I'll make sure the appointment is arranged. I'll be blah, 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 blah. I mean, in other
It's,
words, pragmatically, something really wonderful came out of it. And I didn't really even ask for it.
I was going to say it's amazing to me if you sit back and watch how you treat people,
Mm-hmm.
how you are with people, how you speak to people, how you behave with people, how you react or non-react to
Yeah.
people.
Mm-hmm.
What can come of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
And this exercise of this, which we call give and take of spirit, it's an exercise that we can practice all day, all night. And I say that very emphatically because if you look at society today, most of us think immediately of corporate life or political life or something. Well, actually, that's 1/4 of your life because the other 3/4 of your life is your family and your community and so on. We can
Right.
express this same inner being feeling, this relational commitment one to another. We can do it in every corridor of life. And the result, I think, is, I mean, I want to use the word explosive. I find it absolutely incredible what comes out.
Tell me about expansion without expense while we're kind of on that
Well,
topic.
because this is a critical issue. Everybody today knows that every employee, and I'm going to be very corporate now, but everybody knows that every corporation wants more out of their people. Work harder, stay longer, take your work home with you. And it all gets camouflaged with, oh, but we don't do it that way. Yes, you do.
Yes.
And it's all done. And it's all, very cleverly done. It's deceitfully done, actually. But just imagine for a moment if you were to go up to the head of the chief operating officer and you would say, you want to get more work done? Oh, I know the answer already. Yes. And then you'd say to the officer, what if I could get your output to grow by a third without you actually having to lay out any money? In other words, this is called expansion without expense. What would the COO, the Chief Operating Officer, say?
I'm confident they're listening and you've got their
They
attention.
are listening because their bonus depends on this answer. And the answer is when you create this symbiosis, when you create this avenue of the spirit speaking to the spirit, the inner being speaking to the inner being, you release within the human being assets and ideas and strengths, prosperities you could not even have imagined. People enjoy coming to work. They enjoy being with each other. They look forward to getting in early. They look forward to staying late. They look forward to thinking about their work and the different ways of doing things when they're what you might call off the workforce, off the production line. Yeah. In other words, there is an ability to expand without any expense by strictly going to the ubiety of the human being and recognizing that inner strength, that inner being, and allowing it to speak one to another. In other words, we are no longer bilingual, we are become multilingual because we're now talking language one to another. It's the third way. It works, it's beautiful, it's true, it's authentic, it's powerful, and it takes into consideration so many other parts of the puzzle. You know, whether it's one's family life or whether it's the environment, whatever parts of our lives that we're touching or being touched with, when you have this inner peace, this inner sense of that my spirit can speak to your spirit, then we are into a very powerful arrangement.
On that note, what are next steps, Jeremy?
I think the next steps come into, I've decided there are three parts. The first one is the awareness. I mean, I said earlier, let's take off the dust sheets on our inner being. So that's just an awareness. Be aware of what a human being looks like inside. I think it was Plutarch. You know Plutarch? One of those ancient chappies? Anyway, Plutarch said, and I wrote it down this morning, yes, what we change inwardly will change the outer reality.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's why that's so important. You want to change the world? Well, let's change ourselves inwardly first. So let's become aware of our own inner strengths, our own intention, our own ubiety again. This is what we're designed for. Secondly, I think it's very important that we develop the small groups. Small groups, and you and I have talked about this many times, and you come from a world of understanding small groups. Small groups work. And you can take an idea like this and bat it around. You can say, hey, how does everybody feel about getting their inner being talking to somebody else? You might not want to say that in a shareholders meeting of 2,000 people, but if there's 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of you sitting around having a cup of coffee, it's a lovely conversation.
Right.
And the last thing is this. I know we've talked about journaling, where you write things down about what you've done today. And Respectonomics does actually have, as you know, the living journal, which is a
Yes.
way of very quickly and very easily identifying what did I do today, what did I feel about what I did today, and what triggered the activity. Very straightforward. But the funny thing is, when you start writing that stuff out, your inner being reveals to your mind things you didn't even know you had. It's the most extraordinary phenomenon. So between the small groups, the journaling, and the awareness, this can be the metaphor, it can be the foundational undergrowth to bringing people back to the way for which we were created and for which ultimate prosperity is possible.
Wonderful.
I'm just about to say it.
Go ahead.
Okay, I rest my case.
Excellent. Fantastic topic today, Jeremy. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.